guys, on this episode of What's Mine Is Yours, we are doing things just a little bit differently. I do not have a guest today, so we thought that why not take a look back on season 2. We are coming to an end of season 2, and I thought the best way to do this would be to recap kind of like the hottest topics from each guest. And when I sit down with guests, what you guys need to know is that, I'm only here for a certain amount of time. So what I like to do is not spend too much time on one topic or another. And I like to make it more about the guests and less about, say, my opinion or arguing on a topic for too long or agreeing on a topic for too long. So I figured, why not take the 2 biggest moments from each guest and recapping it and kind of giving you a little bit more of a backstory into my opinion, whether I agreed or disagreed with each guest. We started this whole season off with my friend Tammy interviewing me, which was so not what I'm used to for this show because I sit here and I interview songwriters. So she interviewed me on kind of the start of the show and the point of the show and my take on certain things within the music industry, the songwriting community, and everything in between. So far to this day, the number one clip online that has seen the most traction is when I compared the music industry to fast food. And I still agree with this. And what I meant with this, and I believe what I said is I compared it to a Cheesecake Factory menu. And when you have so much option that you just get overwhelmed and you end up going with like your tried and true, like a BLT or something. I mean, whatever your tried and true is. And that's how I have felt about the music industry. And I feel more comfortable talking about the sense of country music because that is the genre that I spend the most of my time talking about because that is the one I'm actually in. I'm here in Nashville, Tennessee, and the country music industry has felt a lot like fast food music. And I did mention that social media had a huge point to play in this. Because there is so much option online, it is hard to really distinguish between what you want to listen to and what you don't, because there's just so much that you really do become overwhelmed. And I started seeing this around 2020, around COVID, when everybody was on TikTok and everyone was putting up videos, and it just became overwhelming to find a new artist that you liked or something that you really enjoyed. So you ended up kind of going with what you already listened to. Another way I compare this to fast food, and I do not think that I brought this up in the episode, was the sense of new artists and their longevity in town. And how the music industry works now, and again, this is all coming from my opinion, is labels don't really do the work in the sense of finding these new artists and then artists building them into becoming, the artists they are. And I do compare it a lot to, say, like an episode of Shark Tank. And hear me out when I say this. I love Shark Tank. And when someone comes up with a great idea, I always expect that one of the sharks to sign them because they have a great idea, how great we can make a ton of money off that. Well, instead, when there's a great idea, the shark turns around and looks at them and goes, okay, well, how much money have you made in the last year off that product? And that always really confused me. And I compare the labels now to an artist in that sense very well. The artist is the product. You could have a really, really good product, but if they're not already fully built, kind of with the package already all put together, not already selling out shows, on Spotify playlists, making a ton of streams, having a ton of followers on Instagram across all various platforms, that they almost just get passed by because there isn't really necessarily maybe the budget at a label anymore to put behind new artists to kind of help them create the artists they're going to become. And I think there is going to be a revolving door of new artists. And that, again, is my opinion. And I hope that I'm wrong. I hope that in 10 years, the artists we see today are the artists hopefully we're still going to see in 10 years. But I have a sinking feeling that we're just going to have a revolving door of new viral artists, and they're going to be capitalized on for their viral moment. And then a new set of viral artists are going to come in and take their place. I hope I'm wrong, but I got to be honest, I think that's where we're headed, and that's what I'm concerned about, and that's why I've called this fast food music. Our first guest that we had on was Gretchen Wilson, which was really cool. First of all, she's a big artist that has had a legacy and has paved the way for so many artists to be able to do kind of what she did, which was not being necessarily overly feminine, singing about other things that not necessarily just about breakups and things. And she's not your typical, girly girl artist like a Dolly Parton or a Carrie Underwood, but she also created a home for so many listeners, women who like country music, who maybe didn't see themselves in other artists. And now they could find an artist that they see themselves in. And she's really paved the way for a lot of other women in country music to be able to do the same thing. I asked her if it was easier or harder for artists today to make it. And she said she thinks it's so different, but the same. So equally as hard, but it's just a different set of rules. I don't disagree, but I don't agree, if that makes sense, and I'll explain why. I do think it's harder today. And not that I was around when she was here, because I can't speak upon when she was here in Nashville trying to make it. And I do think there was a set of challenges that we don't have today, and that's because the pool was probably much smaller. A smaller set of people were making the decisions. So if you weren't in with the right people, then you weren't getting seen. However, like I said before with the internet and social media, this is why I think it's harder. I think artists are considered to be everything today. A content creator. You have to make all of your videos. You have to get out and make all of your own music. You have to build your social media. You have to do everything to even have a chance of getting noticed, and then hope that at that point, then you're important enough to be seen, to be signed, then to be pushed, to be marketed. So I think there is a new set of challenges for artists today, a set of challenges that weren't expected of an artist before. But like I said, I wasn't there. I wasn't here in Nashville in the 90s. I wasn't here in the 80s. I wasn't here when people were trying to make it then. But I do believe there was things like, for instance, if you've never heard of something called a showcase. I know they're still done today to a degree, but they're not done as much anymore. And if you haven't heard of what a showcase is, it's when a new artist would put on a show, and it would be probably about a 30-minute show, and they'd invite people from the industry, and they would supply food and drink for them to come out, listen to them sing, and if they liked what they saw, then maybe they'd go back to their label, go back, and they would discuss it, and potentially an artist could get signed that way. That's not exactly how things happen anymore. So the idea of being able to stumble on a new artist and believe in them and take a chance on them is just not quite the same anymore. And I really do believe we're missing out on so many incredible opportunities for artists and the talent that we are skipping out on because they don't know how to work social media or they don't know how to have a viral moment. Is just really sad, because at the end of the day, there are people who can become viral off of burping the ABCs. But I don't think someone who can burp the ABCs deserves a record label and millions of dollars behind them to market them. So this is where I agree and disagree with Gretchen on it being harder or easier. I think there is definitely a new set of challenges, but I do believe it's a little bit harder today. Again, this is my opinion. I'm an artist, so I can speak on this, that I do feel that we're expected to do a lot that artists were not expected to do 15, 20 years ago. Gretchen also mentioned that she doesn't know if she could play the game today the way it's played because the rules have changed so much. And she also mentioned a lot of it is because it used to be a good old boys club, and now there is a lot of women in those positions today that men were in before, and she thought that she could play the game better in the good old boys club versus the positions that women hold today. And I do agree with her that definitely women have taken over those positions, a lot of the positions higher up, which I think is incredible. Now, I must say that I don't think a woman or a man deserves a position in any role just because they're a woman or a man. They have to be qualified for that position, but I think that goes without saying. And I think it's great that there are so many more qualified women that are holding those bigger positions. I don't think because women hold those positions is why the game is different or why the rules have changed. I think the rules have changed because of social media. And I think that that's why there are so much differences to be had in how you play the game, on how you get to the top or how you get seen. I don't think it's because women hold those positions versus men. And if I'm not mistaken, she seems to think that a lot of the rules have changed in this town because it's not necessarily the good old boys club anymore. And that's where I think her and I are going to have to disagree. I don't think that's why the rules have changed. I was able to sit down with Anna Voss as my next guest, and what a light and a joy to have her sitting across from me to talk from her. One, I think we're around the same age and we're both, female artists, and she was just a ton of fun to sit down next to. But we had a really, really good discussion about opinions and who you accept those opinions from to influence the music you make. And I asked her if I think she should take opinions on what she does with her music and how it's made. And she had a really good story about how she created a song and then she changed it significantly from what people had originally heard. And she played the new version for her friends, and her friends both said, "Oh my gosh, we love the original version, like put it back because we like the original version so much more." And she did. And she's like, and that's where I realized maybe opinions, do matter to some degree, obviously with a grain of salt. There is this saying that there's too many chefs in the kitchen, and you don't want too many opinions on something that, the art you're creating, because then it just gets very convoluted and then it becomes not the art that you wanted to create. I completely agree with that. However, we are in the music business, and I need to stress the word business. We are trying to make art for the masses. We are trying to make it for an audience. So if you don't listen to an audience, and you get so hung up in what you want to do all of the time, I think you are missing the mark on the fact that the audience is your boss. Now, please take that with a grain of salt as well, because if you just always are listening to outside noise and not your inner gut and yourself, then yes, of course, you're not going to make good music. However, there is something to be said about kind of going into the comment section a little and seeing what a lot of people have to say. And if it's overwhelmingly that it's not finding a home with a group of people, then I think you do need to listen to that. I think there is something to be said about if you're just making it for yourself and not for a group of people, then this isn't your job, then this is just a hobby. And I know that's sometimes very hard to hear, and that is something that is harsh, but a larger group of people than not need to be a fan of what you're doing. And I kind of like to think about like a rule of 6. And again, this is just what I think would probably work, is like 2 friends, 2 people on your team, and maybe 2 people who are within the music industry but are trusted people but aren't on your team. And I think you could get a really good sense of if your music's finding a place with people within probably about 6 people. And again, you don't want too many chefs in the kitchen, but you definitely want to take opinions from people on, to some degree, at least trusted people in your life that have a good kind of sense of what's going on in the industry. Because again, if you're just making this for yourself, it's going to be really hard for you to do something marketed on a wide scale and to make it commercial, and ultimately for this to be your job. So I know that is maybe an unpopular take for a lot of people, because I don't think you should change your art to where it's not yours anymore, but you definitely still need to make it for a larger group of people than a smaller group of people. I had such a good time sitting down with Pete Good, and we talked about if the songwriter is still in the driver's seat of the music industry. We both agreed. This is why I created the show. This show was created because of songwriters. I wanted the microphone to finally be in front of the people who I believe carve out this entire industry. We've all heard the term, it all starts with a song. And without a song, without a songwriter, you've got nothing. And we both agreed that if songwriters just went away tomorrow, would we be able to continue this business? And we both agreed that we wouldn't, that it just couldn't happen. And where I was going with that was the fact that we are in a time where songwriters don't just get to be songwriters anymore. You either are a singer-songwriter or you are a songwriter who is placed in rooms with artists and you help them craft their thoughts, their artistry. And I don't know what's ever happened to just good songwriters like Pete Good, like Jeffrey Steele, who could just get in a room and do what they do and that's just songwrite, and then those songs will eventually find the home that they're meant to be found in. I know that still happens, but it's just not the way it used to be. So there are so many songwriters in this world, like Pete Good, like Jeffrey Steele, that don't want to be artists. They don't want to be center stage. They want to just write music. And unfortunately, that is becoming a thing of the past. Not to say that songwriters can't also be artists, and artists today aren't writing their own music. They are. But there are also a lot of artists that you know today that get in rooms, like myself, by the way, they get in rooms with really talented songwriters, and they are able to help me craft what I want to say. And without them, I couldn't do what I do. And I think if we don't take the time to listen to these songwriters and what they want out of this industry and what they have to say, we are going to lose the heart and soul of this industry, and that is the songwriter. Pete also said something that was just so important for anybody who wants to be in this industry to hear. He said, you have to be present to win. That is something that was said to me very early on. And it's when I didn't live in Nashville, Tennessee. It's when I still lived in Sacramento, California, and I thought I could travel back and forth to Nashville and California and still technically win. Wrong. Finally, someone looked at me and said, you have to be present to win. There's multiple ways you could interpret this. For me, it was I had to be in Nashville. And if I wasn't going to be here to be immersed in the community, wasn't going to be around 7 days a week to be able to show up to writers' rounds, show up here, be there, then how in the world could I be a part of a community that I just simply am not a part of? So that's one way to look at be present to win. Another way to look at it was, I believe, how he kind of mentioned it was everyone has a time, and you have to just be present, make good music, and eventually your time will come. Obviously, I have this feeling of when do you hang the hat up, right? When is it just not working? And I think that's another conversation for another time, and that's very personal to each individual person. But overall, if you know this is what you're meant to do, the only way that this is going to eventually end up working for you is being present. Be present to win. You have to be writing every day. You have to be meeting with people. You have to be going to writers' rounds. You have to be in the community, be present, make good music, be really passionate about what you're doing. And I really do believe a little bit of luck, a little bit of time, a little bit of faith, all of it kind of has to be spinning in the right direction. And eventually, hopefully, if you're meant to be where you're supposed to be, you will win. I just think it takes a lot of patience, a lot of time, and mainly a lot of presence. My next guest was Gordon Kennedy, who comes with such a legacy, not only with him, but with his family. And it was crazy because he has such a legacy. And even him, he said, at one point in my career, I wasn't country enough. And he says that he was told, this isn't country, this isn't country. And his response was, I'm more country than all of you. And what I think was real then, I'm not sure so much is real now. And coming from a girl who is from Sacramento, California, who is not around a lot of, I guess, quote unquote, cliche country. You know, I don't have a twang. I don't say y'all. I'm not around a lot of farmers or whatever. People want a cliche country because at the end of the day, country is now so much more than just stereotypes. But I do believe we've come a long way. I don't believe that where you live now or where you're from has a huge impact on if you can make it in this industry. I used to say that. I used to say like, gosh, I think there's a lot of challenges for people who aren't technically from the South, and can they make it? I don't think that's the case anymore. I'm going to even retract statements I've made from the past because I think we are such a melting pot now. People are so welcoming of so many different backgrounds. I just don't think that's a hang up as much anymore. However, I will tell you where I think it is a hang up. And maybe this is a problem, and this is why people say if you're not country enough. I ship singles out to radio, probably twice a year. And I get the ability to get a printout, once a week and that's an email, by the way, not like a physical printout, but an email of radio programmers saying, next to the song, like, yes, we love it, we're adding it, or no, not for us, or whatever the case is, which is really, really helpful, right? I get to see kind of where it's working and markets that it's working. And I will say there has been times where I've seen next to, the whatever station it is, it will say not country or to pop. Or so, yes, in certain markets, I believe people are looking for different things. So maybe strategically in the South, people are looking for a song that sounds more country. And it doesn't mean that you can't make it. I really, really don't believe that. Another thing that you do have to listen to is the fans. I see an outcry, a pouring outcry of people in the comment sections of whether that's a CMA post, a CMT Awards post, an ACM post, or anything else where it's like a bigger platform where there is a huge melting pot of an audience in the following section in comments where they are basically, it's rough. I will say that. I think this is why people don't go into the comment section a lot. But again, these are your listeners. These are your consumers. And there is an outcry of that doesn't feel country. That's not country enough. And I think this is why you see artists like Cody Johnson, Ella Langley, Lainey Wilson doing so well because they are technically more of a traditional country. And I think that is resonating with people a lot right now because that is seemingly what the country music audience is looking for. Again, this is a pendulum. It swings. I think there is going to be a time where maybe it's not. Let's be honest. When I moved to Nashville about 8 years ago, Florida Georgia Line and the idea of bro country was huge. People loved it. Those concerts were sold out everywhere. So I just really do believe it is a pendulum. And it seems that right now, the audience and the consumer is looking for country music, traditional country music, whatever that means to you. That is a debate that will forever be a debate on what is country music. And obviously, people are going to vote with their pocketbooks. And right now, it seems to be on the idea of more of a traditional country, which is more of a Cody Johnson or a Lainey Wilson. Something that Gordon also said was he believes there is still a huge appreciation for the songwriter in the industry today. This is where my opinion might be controversial. I come from just a person, right? I'm in no seat that's making decisions. I'm just somebody as a bystander in this community that sees things like everybody else does. And I don't agree. I think we have lost an appreciation for the songwriter. I think there is a lot of outcry for them, but then not a lot of action. So while I see a lot of appreciation for the songwriter in so many ways here in Nashville, like writers' rounds and the communities that help the songwriters, the publishers, all of those things, absolutely yes. But in so many other ways, I kind of feel like they're used as a cash cow. I think that the community makes a lot of money off of these songwriters. A lot of the idea that, yes, we're built on the backs of songwriters. Look at this. But yet not a lot is done for them. If anything, things are done seemingly to hurt them. So while it feels like there is an outcry and there's a lot going on for the songwriter in Nashville, in my opinion, it feels like that's mainly just a fast cash grab. And that is my opinion, of course, but I don't see a lot going on to help the songwriter. I see a lot to benefit from them. And that's about it. So while I love that Gordon feels that way, and gosh, I hope I'm wrong, I just don't see it the same way that he sees it. I see a lot of more reasons for me to have this show and to say these opinions so that more people can hear them, so that more people can actually do something about it and not just benefit from the songwriter, like I do, by the way, as an artist who gets to be in rooms with fabulous songwriters and write incredible music. I benefit from these songwriters. So it's only important that I do my job to make sure that their side of things are also heard. So I would like to see this community maybe not use them for their benefit and actually do what they say they're going to do, and that is help the songwriting community. Because again, like I said on the episode with Pete Good, without the songwriting community, we don't have music. We don't have this business that we all benefit from one way or another. Gordon said that he missed the small community feeling that once was in Nashville. And mind you, I wasn't here, but I have to agree. I think overall, my guests on season 2 have all collectively felt that Nashville has become more cliquey, however you want to define that. But I agree. I think it's harder to get involved in these groups because we are all so sectioned off now, whether it's, this group here with this publisher, this group here with this group of people. And it's so hard to kind of find your place, your home. If you're moving from far away, for instance, I moved, from California, it's been very hard for me to find my people because it has become very cliquey. And according to Gordon, it just wasn't like that. Everybody kind of commingled with each other. You walked down Music Row, you knew the people who ran that label, you knew the people that ran that publisher. Everyone just collectively worked together to help create what the beautiful genre of country music was. And now I feel like you have so many different melting pots in different areas and they all just seemingly don't seem to work together. They kind of work in their own camps, and that's that. And I think that's very, very hard today to be somebody coming in who isn't in one of those camps and trying to make their way and pave their way in this industry. So I do hope that we are able to, even though the world's getting bigger, obviously with social media, things just continue to get bigger and bigger, right? That we are able to still be able to find community within that and hopefully opening our arms up to more people and allowing them a chance in whatever camp you're in, whatever group you're in. I think we need to learn to welcome more people at the table versus the cliche way of thinking like, well, we're full, go find somewhere else. I think that just isn't going to work. And it's a turnoff, quite frankly. And hopefully that we find a way to find in the big world that we're in, we find community and we find ways to open our arms up to more people and make it feel like maybe more of an inclusive, smaller community like it once was. My next guest was Mark Irwin, and I asked him what is the most challenging thing in a songwriter's world today. And his response was finding new way to say things. And that's what's really interesting because I completely agree. And I remember having a conversation with Parker Welling, who also was an incredible guest on the show, about how we're dealing with a little bit of an issue. Again, this was probably a very hot topic, and I know it was because I had so many messages about it and my take on this. But the most influential thing that was done, according to Google, mind you, it's Google, in 5 years in country music was Luke Combs' Fast Car. I said that was really, really concerning. And not that this is Luke Combs' fault by any means or Tracy Chapman's fault. He did a beautiful rendition of the song. How incredible is that? But the fact that to a lot of people, that's the biggest thing that's happened in country music in 5 years is very concerning. I compared it to Disney movies and how they're taking the cartoons and they're creating the live actions now. The live actions nobody asked for. It's just like, great, I get it, I guess. But we already had the original. People love the original. Why do we need another one? It's kind of how I'm feeling about music right now. Are we running out of things to say? And that's a real question and a real debate that I think a lot of people can have. Have we ran out of new ways to say things? Eventually, yeah, you're right. We are just going to reword things just to a different melody. There are only so many breakups in the world people can have, broken hearts, ways to fall in love. Absolutely. But the fact that the most influential thing that's happening, our genre, in 5 years is a cover that wasn't even originally a country song, we have to ask ourselves, have we run out of things to say? Have we hit a wall? How do we reinvent that wall? How do we get us re-excited about our own genre and find new ways to say things. So this goes back to Mark Irwin saying the most challenging thing for a songwriter he feels right now is finding new ways to say the same thing. And I think that will always be an issue in music. And this is our job. It's our job to make sure that that doesn't die. And we have to work harder to find new ways to say things. And hopefully we don't lean on things that have already been done, already been said, and just redo them and slap it out to the public and say, here it is, just with a new twist on it. I think we can do better than that. I think we are better than that. And like I said, this isn't Luke Combs' fault. He loved the song Fast Car. He put it out. I highly doubt Luke Combs thought that song was going to be the most influential thing in the last 5 years. So it's not Luke Combs' fault. Whose fault is it? Is it our community's fault that we're not doing better? I don't know. I think that's up for discussion, but I think it is something to ponder. I think it's something that we all need to think about, and hopefully we do better. I asked Mark Irwin what was the one word to describe Nashville and country music right now. And I guess he said it in 2 words, but he said the Wild West. And I agree. I think it very much is like the Wild West in a good and a bad way. First of all, I do think anything can happen. And again, this is because of social media. This is platforms like TikTok, like Instagram, where you are able to kind of put anything out there and see what sticks versus, obviously 20 years ago, we didn't have that ability. It was kind of up to people in higher seats and higher chairs to be able to decide if they wanted to take something and see if it stuck, and if they wanted to put marketing behind something to see if it stuck. He said that he thinks it's a time where like any type of music can work. And I do agree. However, I think we do need to reel it in a little bit. While I am all about the melting pot, because I've said that already before, I don't want to be a hypocrite. I do think we need to be careful about how much is welcomed into a genre, just as if you would welcome it into the rock genre or rap or pop, because sooner or later we aren't going to have a genre, right? It's just going to be music. And there is something to be said about country music, pop music, rap, R&B, rock, whatever it is that you fancy. There is something to be said about genres that are split. And I think if we don't let this train run away as much as we have let it run away, and I think the audience has spoken, by the way. This is why you have people in the comments saying, that doesn't feel country, or why does that feel more pop, or why is he rapping in that song? I get it. While I also love the idea of having some influence from other music in our genre, we can't let it get away from us either, or we don't have a genre. We just have music. And so I think if we aren't careful, we do away with the genres altogether. And we are slowly but surely doing that. And I think right now people are trying to go backward, and we're trying to fix what has been done. And I think we're trying to overcorrect. So we'll see if it works, but I'm really not sure. I think we're trying, but I don't know. My next guest was Kelly Loveless, and I was really, really excited to have him on for numerous reasons. So if you watch this episode, you know why I was excited about having him on. But we talked a lot about, Try That in a Small Town, because he wrote that with 3 other men, and it caused a lot of controversy. And mind you, the song was put out before the controversy. The album, I think, had been put out on either weeks or a few months prior to the music video. And that's neither here nor there. But he really wanted to discuss the intention behind the song and how that he was really glad that Jason Aldean had the guts to say it, because Jason wasn't a writer on it. The song was pitched to him. He liked it because we were in turmoil at the time. I believe it was around 2020, and our cities were being lit on fire and people were being punched in the streets. And I think he even talks about how the whole song started because one of them saw a video of an elderly lady getting punched, or an elderly man getting punched. And it's just like, what have we come to? Do we have no humanity anymore? Have we lost humanity? And that was really the intention behind the song. So I think if we really look at it without, I guess, removing the music video altogether and just look at the words of the song and what the intention of the song was. It was to stop inciting violence and hopefully finding some humanity within community again. And that we shouldn't be accepting elderly getting punched in the street or small businesses being lit on fire where they lose everything. I think we can all collectively, hopefully, agree that that is just not okay. And that is where the hearts of, I think, these gentlemen were when they wrote this song. So while it's come with so much backlash after the fact, that's not the point of what I think Kelly was meaning when they sat down and wrote that song. And if anything, they were just really grateful that, you know, an artist like Jason had a similar mindset on the idea of not wanting to see our streets turned into, I guess for lack of a better word, like what Mark Irwin said, the wild, wild west. Like, we have to live in a civilized community where we treat each other with respect and love, and we should not be behaving like children. So I think that's where the point of the song came from, and I think that's definitely what Kelly meant, and I completely agree with him. Again, not talking about the music video, just the words of the song. Kelly also talked about the struggle of when artists write with really big songwriters and they create really good music, and then artists don't have any intention of necessarily releasing it to radio or releasing it all, because now we live in a world, like I said, you could put it out on social media and the song can go viral, and the artist will benefit from this, from viral moments, not the songwriter. So the only way the songwriter benefits from a song doing really well is if it gets, you know, sent to radio as a single, or, you know, obviously there are other ways to make money, but it's not through an artist independently releasing that song to social media. So he had said, I would really love to see a time where artists and songwriters make a deal where at least songwriters can own part of the mastering of these songs, because in this new day and age, a song can be huge and be released on TikTok, and people can listen to it that way or through Instagram versus having to actually release it, you know, for it to be streamed or be sent to radio. And the songwriter makes virtually no money off of that if they own none of the mastering, you know, of that song. So I really do agree with him on that. I think because we are in such a new day and age of how people indulge in their music and find new music, and it is through social media, that we do need to give more credit to the songwriter because of these viral moments that are happening on various platforms. And I 100% agree. I think it's awful that a song can go virtually bananas online and go crazy, and that songwriter or those songwriters get nothing from it, and just the artist does because they didn't release it technically the more intentional, proper way, which is through radio or just in general on platforms other than social media. So I do agree. I think that songwriters need to negotiate for, you know, better points in a system where the world is ever changing and music is changing every single day. How we consume our music is changing so rapidly and so fast. And the business side of things is not keeping up. So people who should be receiving credit, unfortunately, are not receiving credit. So we need to do better. We need to do better as a community. Artists need to do better. Labels need to do better. We all need to do better at making sure that the songwriters, again, the back of this industry, the whole industry, they need to receive more, because without them, we don't have this industry. I was so excited to sit down with Tenille Townes because she's also, like kind of Anna Voss, she is an artist, a female artist here in town, and she's recently been going through huge changes in her career. She was signed at Sony and now she's an independent. And one of the first things, you know, I talked about with her was this idea of fame, money, and love, and why all of those are really like hard topics to talk about and why they are hard to talk about, which I really don't know why. I think everybody should just be honest, and that we get into this business one way or another because we want to seek validation and fame. Ooh, scary word. Because all fame is we want people who we don't know to know us. Well, of course, we want to release music that affects people that we will probably never meet. So yeah, that's garnering attention from people we do not know and seeking validation from that. And then in return, hoping they love it. We want people who don't know us to love what we do, or we can't do what we do, which is just the very simple when you put it in like layman's terms like that. It's just not as dirty of topics to talk about as people like to think. Another thing is money. Of course, we want to make money doing what we do, just as if you were a grocery store clerk, an Amazon delivery driver, or a doctor. You want to get paid for your job, right? You want to show up to work, you clock in, you do your job, and you want to get paid for it. I just doubt that the Amazon delivery driver wants to drive for 10 hours a day and then go home and say he did it for charity. It's just not the case. I think, of course, us as musicians want to change the world. We want to make sure that people feel less alone. But at the end of the day, we would do it for ourselves or release it on our own if we didn't care about also being paid for that. If we are foregoing another job, which is to pay the bills, and we are trying to do this full time, and let's be honest, if you really want to make it in this town, you have to commit yourself almost 100% of you. So it's very hard for you to hold another job, make money, pay the bills, and also further this career because there are so many more people in line behind you that are ready to take your spot if you don't commit yourself 100% of the time. So again, if I can't have another job because I have to commit myself to this 100% of the time, I have to pay my bills. I have to do my job. So this has to become your job. And why that is such a tricky topic to talk about, I will never understand it. And, talking about her now becoming an independent, I, asked her if she was scared to release this new music because at one point she was backed by Sony with marketing and all of these other great things, right, where they're able to help it, get it out there. And she said, yes, it's scary, but it's also freeing. And what I didn't say to her, which I would present to her now, is she feels it's freeing for her, but is that because she has been able to build an audience? She does have an audience now where now that she's independent, it might not be as scary because she has the audience. So when she does release something, and a large group of people will know she has released it. It's very different from somebody who maybe is potentially like, I'm going to use myself as the example because I'm the only one that can really speak upon this because it's me and I don't want to speak upon somebody else who can't speak on it. I'm an independent artist. I don't have the audience she has. I was never backed by a big label like Sony. So my audience is quite small. So it's always scary to release something because I don't have the marketing behind me to get it out there to people to hear my music. I have to hope that I have that viral moment or something just clicks and it naturally takes off, which, by the way, is very hard. If you don't have the backing, it's very hard to be seen by thousands and thousands, if not millions of people. So I will say she is in a very good position as an independent because she once was in the seat signed at a major label. So she was able to build a very large audience, obviously with the help of marketing of Sony. So I think that in her seat, it might be easier to say that it's freeing just due to the fact that at one point she was backed by a major label and she has garnered a very large audience, obviously based off of her own hard work. But Sony and marketing obviously helped, and we can't deny that because sitting in the seat where I'm sitting, I would love to have the opportunity to have said that I've been signed to Sony and I've had that help at one point or another and built an incredible huge audience because I've been on major tours or whatever the case is. More eyes obviously gives you a better opportunity to grow. And the more eyes you have, the better you can do. Obviously, the eyes have to like you, but at the end of the day, more eyes, better exposure, you have a better opportunity to win. That's just kind of the name of the game. The last guest that I had before, we continue to move on with season 2, and we're rearing an end of season 2, which is really exciting because we are now in a studio and it's not in my living room, and it's been a lot of fun, and I'm really, really looking forward to seeing where this show can go and the guests we're going to have for season 3, because we are already working on that. But the last guest we've had so far is Derek George. And the number one thing that I very much agree with him about is that we are living in a soundbite world. And I think you understand that there's very much a correlation between almost every guest we've talked about. We've talked about social media and how much it's rapidly changed this industry, and how people choose to release certain songs due to how would it work in a soundbite? How would it work in 30 seconds? How would it work for someone who's scrolling by and they only get 10 seconds of their attention? Whew, this is hard. This is really, really hard. And I don't love it for us as artists. I don't love it for us as songwriters. I don't love it for us in this industry, because we don't have the attention span of people that we used to have. We have created a world, and we are all a part of the problem because we use these apps, and now we're just trying to use them to our benefit, right? At the end of the day, they're here, they're not going anywhere. If anything, they're going to get bigger and more widespread. So now we have to figure out a way to use them to our benefit. So while we've sat here, and I'm even a part of the problem of complained about where this has all gone, at the end of the day, this is where it's all gone. So you're either going to adapt and you're going to use it to your benefit, or unfortunately, you're just going to have to take a seat. I don't like that I have to say that. I don't like that I can't say, gosh, can we just rewind and go back? But at the end of the day, that's just not the reality of it. We have helped create the community that we're in, and we are in a social media driven world in sound bites. So now it's about what can we grab from someone? How can we get someone's attention as quickly as possible? And that's how we choose songs. And I think that we are I agree with him, and that's just ultimately what we're going to have to do. I really do like the fact that he said that it seems that more emotional things are grabbing people. I think that's great. I think that the less cheesy, tacky, by the way, there's a place for that. I think that's great. Like, for instance, let's be honest, the song Country Girl Shake It For Me, Luke Bryan, is one of his biggest songs. It's cheesy, but guess what? It worked. People liked it. It made people feel happy. Walker Hayes' song, I fancy like, it's cheesy. People liked it. It worked. There is always going to be those moments where the song like that works. However, I love that he said that right now people are craving emotion, something that really brings something out of somebody. That's what music is supposed to do. And sometimes it is the cheesy song. It's the tacky song. It makes someone feel happy. I mean, what's wrong with feeling happy? You don't always have to cry at a song for it to be important. I think there is a place for everything. So I guess we're just going to see where music takes us now. I think, like I've said, it's a pendulum. It's going to swing. Things are going to take sharp turns, changes, and to be in this business, you have to act quick. You got to be honest to yourself first and foremost. You have to be unapologetic about who you are as a songwriter and as an artist. But you do have to see where trends are going and things are happening, and hopefully you can adapt authentically. And I say that the word authentically in meaning that very intentionally. I want you to be able to adapt. I want to be able to adapt to the changes, the ever-changing of music, but you have to do it authentically. An audience will not believe you if you aren't being true to yourself. So while it's such a fine line, and I know it's weird, but you have to walk the line of what works for a broad audience at the same time as being authentic to yourself. And I think that's what makes this industry so hard and tricky, and for you to be able to cross the threshold of you doing it for yourself and doing it for a group of people. It's about walking that thin, fine line of I want to be authentic to myself, but I also need to get the attention of hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people, which I understand is just so tricky. And this is why so few people can do it. So I think that's everything that we've been doing on this show so far. And like I said, I am so excited for season 3, and we are really working on it hard to see where this show can go. And I hope you guys have enjoyed season 2. It's been so much fun to have this in a new environment and being able to be really more intentional, I think, with my guests, because we're in a studio, we have limited time that we're working with per each guest, and seeing what works with you guys as an audience listening to this and what you're interested in, and finding out just as much as it is like as an artist releasing music to a public and seeing what works for an audience. It's the same way of releasing a podcast and what I ask my guests and what works with you as an audience, as a listener and a watcher. So thank you so much for watching, and I'm really looking forward to seeing what comes next. This is What's Mine is Yours.